Alright, hello guys. In this video I'm going to be updating you guys on that snowstorm that's going to be occurring during Monday through Tuesday time frame, even a little bit of tomorrow for the Rockies. We're going to go over this entire storm on the radar and then also have our snowfall outlook at the end. Now before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather related content, and also make sure to check out the links in the description for our social medias. Also share this on your Facebook and other social medias with your friends if you think they'll find it useful or interesting. Now let's get right into things. First off, we're looking at our watches, warnings, and advisories, and you can see we have winter weather advisories there for a lot of Montana in those purple colors. We even have a little bit of winter storm watches there for the mountains of Montana, and then winter storm warnings there in the middle of those advisories in that pink color in Montana. Now this is an area that we expect to see a little bit of heavier snowfall during the beginning of this storm, but not necessarily the bullseye. Again, we're going to have the snowfall outlook at the end, so stay tuned for that. Now let's start talking about these model runs. We're going to be looking at the Canadian model today because if you watched yesterday's video, you would know that this one has been the most consistent with this winter storm, and it's really stuck with what it's been saying for about a week now, which is very, very impressive for a model to do. And it seems like the European and the GFS model are folding to what the Canadian model was showing, so it seems like this model is doing a great job with this system so far. Now, starting tonight, we're going to start to see some snowfall moving into Montana in some of those areas with the winter weather advisories and the winter storm warning. These areas are expecting to receive accumulating snowfall, and again, I know I keep saying it, but at the end of the video, we will have that snowfall outlook for you guys. Now, let's move on to tomorrow afternoon, and you can see the Dakotas are starting to receive snowfall as well as a little bit of Minnesota as well, and we still have snow falling for the state of Montana. Now, as we head into Sunday night, you can see this begins to make its way south into Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas there, as well as South Dakota still at this point. Now, we see that moderate snowfall is moving very, very quickly, as this is only about 6 to 10 hours after that previous frame, so this storm is going to fly through these areas, and this is quite typical with a Clipper system, which is what this is starting out as. It starts up there in Alberta, moves down into Montana, and then down through some of these Rocky states and through the Midwest, and then it's going to make its way east. Now, at this point, we're going to need to switch over to the eastern United States, where there's also going to be some interesting stuff going on here. You can see we already see Chicago starting to receive snowfall, as well as upstate New York and a little bit of the interior New England regions. Now, this is hardly associated with our low pressure system yet, but we do have some snow falling, or at least snow showers in the area. Now, as we move on a frame, we're going to start to see this system really starting to make an impact for areas like Chicago and the northeastern United States as we move on right now. As you can see, Chicago is receiving moderate snowfall by the time we're in Monday morning here, and that low pressure system is starting to develop there in Texas and Oklahoma, making more and more intense precipitation down there. And it's just intensifying in general. We see Nebraska and Kansas receiving snowfall, and Colorado still, as well as northern Missouri and southern Iowa. Let's move on one more frame, though, to Monday afternoon, and you can see this one's really starting to intensify, and just look at all that cold behind it. All those cold rings intensifying, lower and lower geopotential height, meaning more and more cold air up there. I also, on this frame, wanted to take a look at some areas in Michigan there. If you take a very close look, you can see very dark blues in there. That's where we're seeing some serious lake effect snow occurring for those regions, and that's going to really make those areas see heavier snowfall than the surrounding regions. So I am taking that into account on my snowfall forecast, as well as areas like the Finger Lakes regions, Erie, and eventually Cleveland are also going to get some lake effect enhancement from this one. You can see St. Louis by this point is receiving moderate snowfall, and Chicago is still seeing moderate snowfall at this point. Let's move on to Monday night, and you can see Cleveland is receiving a lot of snowfall by this point. And again, that lake effect snow for Michigan is still around with that very cold air moving over the warm lakes. That's how lake effect works, and we are seeing that take effect at this point on the model run. We see moderate snow taking over for upstate New York, the Finger Lakes regions, Adirondacks, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, and Maine by this point, in northern Pennsylvania. We also see some light snow to finish for areas in Ohio and possibly even Kentucky and Tennessee, though I think that might be a little bit far-fetched with this one. Again, we did in yesterday's video talk about the areas that are kind of fantasy land, not really going to happen, and the models have really trended away from those areas receiving snowfall, just like I said would happen. Now, as we head on to Tuesday morning here, things are about to get very, very intense and a lot more exciting weather is about to take place. You can see Michigan is still receiving that lake effect snowfall, so we're expecting a lot of extra snow to occur for those regions. Cleveland is expecting to see some lake effect snow, or at least areas just to the east of Cleveland there. And we see moderate snowfall down through West Virginia and some of the mountains of Virginia and up through the western portions of Pennsylvania, the northern portions of Pennsylvania. But the highlight of this storm at this point is for upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, just like we expected it would be. I mentioned that again in yesterday's video. These areas are receiving moderate snowfall, and really they're going to see the most accumulating snowfall as well out of this entire system. We see our low pressure system is located just over Boston, and this is the reason why southern New England isn't getting snowfall with this system. If we did see that low pressure system just to the south and east, we would be seeing snowfall in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York City, New Jersey. I don't see why. But this low pressure system is further north and it is moving too fast. The cold air does not get in place in time, and it's too warm. We see rain for those regions, and that's just how it is sometimes. Now let's move on one more frame to Tuesday evening, and you can see the system is really moving out quickly. We see our low pressure system is barely affecting Maine by this point with some lighter snowfall. But you can see a lot of lake effect snow is occurring there for Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan still. So I wanted to show that just to let you guys know that near those lakes regions and even far into Pennsylvania, it's going to be very, very difficult to forecast local amounts. Now, some of these areas that get this lake effect band could see 3 to even 6 inches more than the surrounding regions. The hard part is the models vary a lot on the areas that could see these bands, and that's going to be more of a nowcast type situation. That's going to be the type of situation where we don't know where these bands are going to go until they're here. Whereas a low pressure system, we can really, really hone in on where we think that's going to be located. So that's the differences with those types of events in weather. And that's the fun part of forecasting, is we have a lot of different factors that go into these forecasts. As I move on one more frame towards Wednesday morning, you can see we still have some lake effect snow occurring. And also look at that trough in the eastern United States. The 13th, Wednesday the 13th, guys, that is going to be a very, very cold day in the eastern United States. New England, the mid-Atlantic, I mean, very close to freezing as high temperatures for a lot of these regions. Very, very unseasonably cold, and it's going to feel a lot more like late December in through January. This winter is really getting to an early start, isn't it, guys? I love it personally. Let me know what you guys think of the winter getting to an early start. Now, let's move on to my snowfall forecast, and this is probably what all of you clicked on this video for, and I'm going to get right into it. Now, we're starting out with this little tiny gray area. I'm actually going to zoom in for you guys so you can see it better, but we have an area that could see flakes. This isn't where I'm expecting to see any accumulation, so Boston, New York City, a lot of areas in New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, but I think you could see your first flakes of the season if you haven't already. I don't think any of these areas have, but if you have, you could see your second flakes of the season. But a lot of these areas are going to see their first snowflakes of the season. Not all of these areas, but there will be scattered and isolated mixing and snow occurring within these regions at the tail end of the storm, I would say. Now, let's add our first layer of accumulating snowfall, and in this white region is where I expect a dusting of 3 inches to fall, and this extends over a lot of major cities just to the north of Denver, areas like St. Louis, Minneapolis, Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis. Did I say St. Louis? St. Louis, Columbus. We see Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany. A lot of big cities in this here that are going to see a dusting to 3 inches. So this one is actually impacting a lot of Americans, and we're going to see a dusting to 3 inches extend over all of those regions. Now let's add our second layer, and this is going to be our 3 to 6 inch layer. You can see there's 2 areas in Montana where I expect to see 3 to 6 inches, and that's just where we saw the heaviest precipitation, as well as a high elevation region there in western Montana. I expect to see 3 to 6 inches. Also, Chicago and the very western regions of Michigan with that lake effect for Michigan, and then Chicago, I expect to see that low pressure system starting to get more intensified as it brings the precipitation over you guys. Therefore, I think you will see heavier snowfall than surrounding regions. Now, for the eastern United States, so the interior northeast, I think that this region, again, as the low pressure system intensifies, is going to see heavier snowfall and longer amounts of snowfall. So from Cleveland up through Erie, Pennsylvania, some of those northwestern Pennsylvania regions, up through upstate New York and interior New England, we're expecting 3 to 6 inches of snow to fall. Now, our third layer of snowfall, this is our 6 to 10 inch layer, and this extends basically from Cleveland up through Buffalo and into the interior New England. So this isn't impacting a lot of regions. Those are the only 2 cities where we have high areas of population. So those are going to be the 2 most impacted cities there. But really, it's going to be a mostly interior northeast storm as far as the major effects, the areas that will see major snowfall. And we even have a 10 to 15 inch layer here for the Adirondacks, the northern Green Mountains, the areas to the north of the White Mountains, and then interior Maine. And if you've ever been to these regions, I guess there's areas in Vermont that have a lot of population up there. But besides that, this is no man's land, basically. There is a lot of areas that have some people living there, and it is a beautiful area, but just very low population. So there's probably hardly any of you that live there, but that's the area that I expect to see the most snowfall and potentially scattered amounts of 10 inches plus. I might have to scale back on that in future updates, but we'll have to see. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.